Hello everyone and welcome to this month's episode of Jig Retro, this time looking at video games based on one of my favourite superheroes of all time, Spider-Man. These games are what are most memorable for me, so please don't be upset if your game doesn't feature in this video. If you're enjoying this content, please feel free to like, share with like-minded video game enthusiasts and subscribe to get monthly episodes. I release these videos on the last Friday of every single month. In this video relating to Spider-Man video games, I've tried to cover a few different consoles for a good old bit of nostalgia. As you can probably tell, I don't have much time for reading, but to this day I do enjoy a good graphic novel. When I was about 12 years old, before I was a retro gaming uber geek, I really enjoyed comic books and comic book art. Much more Marvel style than DC if I'm being honest, and Spider-Man was by far my favourite to both read and draw. At one point my dream job was to be a comic book artist. I soon got real as my talent never really reached anything like what it would have been required to actually take it seriously. With that said, the friendly neighbourhood Spider-Man never left me, and I'm sure that I had some sort of Spider-Man video game on every single console I had. So here we have it, here are some games that have huge nostalgia feels for me. First off, SpiderMan for the Sega Megadrive, released in 1991. Developed by Technopop, this was a game that I picked up for the trusty old Megadrive way back in the day. I remember it fondly for being a good action platformer and faithful to the source material. Most memorable for me was that you were primitively able to web swing. The huge number of enemy bosses that I recognised from the comic books, such as Dr. Octopus, Lizard, Electro, Mysterio, Sandman, Hobgoblin, and even Venom on the hard setting, and being able to take photos of both bosses and minor enemies, adding a rarely seen Peter Parker element to the game. In fact, this element was not just a cheap add-on, it was an important mechanic in the game, as you needed the money that you got paid from J. Jonah Jameson from the Daily Bugle in order to pay for web fluid, which is limited by a meter in the game. I've played plenty of this game and I have actually really enjoyed revisiting it. The next game I'm going to talk about is Maximum Carnage, which I personally played on the SNES, but is also available for the Megadrive. Man, this game. At the height of my Spidey fandom, a friend had this game on his SNES, and let me tell you, we played this game constantly. It was either round mine for Streets of Rage 2, or round his for Maximum Carnage. It was like brawler style games all round in those days. In hindsight, Streets of Rage is by far the better game, but at the time, and probably due to my Spidey rose tinted glasses, this game was well up there for us. Based on and faithfully adapted from the 14-part comic book crossover of the same name, released in 1994 and developed by Software Creations, which is based right here in England in Manchester, and published by the infamous American toy company LJN, known for their video game stinkers, which this is absolutely not in my opinion. Both 16-bit versions are virtually identical, therefore it doesn't matter which version you decide to play. For some reason I was convinced that this had a 2-player co-op setting, but me and my buddy must have just taken it in turns, as I have seen no such setting while capturing this footage. This was the first Spider-Man video game to be rated teen, and I'm guessing due to the violent serial killer antagonist that the comics are based around. This game's soundtrack was written and produced by American rock band Green Jelly, and computerized after the fact in order to fit on the cartridges. The third game that we're going to talk about is Spider-Man for the PlayStation 1, which was also released for the N64 and the Dreamcast. Released in 2000 and developed by Neversoft using the Tony Hawk Pro Skater engine, Spidey himself even appears as an unlockable character in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. The storyline assists with hardware limitations by having a poisonous fog flood the city streets while Spidey runs along the tops of buildings. The story involves Spider-Man trying to clear his name from a crime perpetrated by a doppelganger while stopping a symbiote invasion orchestrated by Carnage and Doc Ock. Specifically for this game, they have the Carnage symbiote attached to Doc Ock. There are numerous villains from Spider-Man and loads of cameos from other heroes in the Marvel Universe. In this first 3D Spider-Man title, you have never felt more like your favourite neighbourhood Spider-Man. Much more than a simple 3D brawler, there are stealth elements, and there is a definite freedom to how you tackle enemies. In the audio department, some voice actors reprise their roles from popular Spider-Man animated series, such as Spider-Man 1994 and Spider-Man Unlimited. Topped off with the narration by co-creator of the character Stan Lee, then this game has all the feels from the comic books. The soundtrack was created by video game composing legend Tommy Tallarico, and features original music loops of industrial and the new metal genres. I think this game laid down all the groundwork for 3D Spider-Man games moving forward, and this video game is an absolute classic.
Whoa! Hurry up, Parker! Move it, Spidey, move it!
Spider-Man 2, available for the PS2, the GameCube and the Xbox, is a movie tie-in game developed by Treyarch. In my opinion, like the movie, Spider-Man 2 the video game was an improvement over its predecessor. This time it takes things a whole lot further with an open world New York City sandbox just to play around in being Spider-Man. Taking inspirations from games such as Grand Theft Auto, you can simply follow the story or take on loads of side missions or random events that happen while swinging around. If ever I stick this game in today for a quick blast, then without fail I make my way to the top of the Empire State Building and hurl myself off and wait until the last second to throw out some webbing. The web swinging mechanic in this game is the star of the show, somehow managing to ditch webbing into an invisible dome in the sky and actually attaching to buildings, trees and skyscrapers. This takes some getting used to, but quite quickly you'll be whizzing around the city in no time. The basic narrative of the story loosely follows the movie, but throughout you get sidetracked with other side stories involving many more characters and enemies.
Pizza! Thank you very much. I'd better return the bag now.
In my opinion, this was the very best Spider-Man game for a very long time. And I always thought it would take something really special to surpass it, but that day finally came with the release of Spider-Man PS4. But before we talk about that, here are a couple of Spidey honourable mentions. Marvel's Spider-Man on the PS4 was released in 2018 by Insomniac and represents the first licensed game for the company. Other games developed by the company include Spyro the Dragon, Ratchet and Clank, and on a side note, their first game that they developed was one of my favourites from the PlayStation 1, a Doom clone called Disruptor. Spider-Man PS4 is really a culmination of all the 3D Spider-Man games and is the best Spider-Man experience. A gripping main story, a huge open world with seemingly endless Easter eggs and comic book lore, unlockable suits with different attributes which can really change gameplay for a huge replay value, and a huge variety of side missions to keep you occupied. The music ramps up at just the right moments to give you epic superhero feels. This game was the most fun I've had with a recent AAA title. The main story will take you around the 20-hour mark, and completionists will be looking at more like the 35-hour mark. The sense of freedom and actually feeling like Spider-Man and Peter Parker has never been more fleshed out than it is with this title. I have no experience with some other Spider-Man games, such as Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, Ultimate Spider-Man, Spider-Man Edge of Time, or Spider-Man Web of Shadows. Also, I've never played any of the amazing Spider-Man movie tie-in games, all of which usually rank near the top of Spider-Man video game lists. Please comment below if you have any opinions on these or any other Spider-Man video games. Are they worth me playing or adding to my collection? It's been really fun to go back and play some of these old video games based on my favourite superhero. I had a blast capturing the footage. I hope you have enjoyed my video. Until next time, much love. Please look after yourselves and each other and get your geek on with Jig Retro.